Tom Merriman's second day on the I-Team was 9/11.
Immediately, everything changed about what we were going to do as reporters.
In Cleveland, 2 days after 9/11, Imam Fawaz Damra, leader of Ohio's largest mosque, was praised as a symbol of peace. But Tom Merriman had a source and tapes of Damra that no one had ever seen.
On these tapes, what they showed was him raising money for terrorist organizations.
The first principle is that terrorism, and terrorism alone, is the path to liberation.
Tom traced Damra's history back to a mosque in Brooklyn. 5 of the 1993 World Trade Center bombers were members of that mosque, and Tom found Damra was labeled by federal prosecutors as an unindicted co-conspirator in the 93 bombing, though he was never charged. And then Tom's investigation into Fawaz Damra took a dramatic turn with one phone call from an intelligence official he'd never met.
I want you to fly to Washington, D.C. I want you to drive to this parking garage, and I want you to then dial this number.
It was out of a movie.
It was straight out of a movie. It was unbelievable.
He was directed to a residential building not too far from the nation's capital.
But when the door opens of the room I'm going to go into, it's not somebody's condo. It is an intelligence operation with buzzing with people. And I'm like, oh my God. And they took me to a room and they said, here's all the tapes we have. You can have anything you want.
Yeah.
And that
sealed it.
Sealed the deal.
The tapes included one of Abdullah Azzam, Osama bin Laden's spiritual leader and a founder of Al-Qaeda, at Damra's Brooklyn Mosque. Tom found that Damra signed the Articles of Incorporation in New York for a supposed charity linked to the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. It had a sister organization in Pakistan run by bin Laden. Though Damra played no part in 9/11, he was a terrorist fundraiser and helped set in motion the events that led Al-Qaeda to America. He was eventually imprisoned, then deported. Still, why trust an intelligence officer you don't know and go alone to a parking garage in Washington, D.C.?
We're going to do everything we could to find the truth. And so absolutely I went. I'd do it again tomorrow.
Fearless and passionate, Tom Merriman also liked having a little fun with the absurd.
Cruising the streets and shopping for groceries with a woman who looked a bit old for elementary school. Hey, I'm wondering, are you running a taxi service or what? No, this guy. Hey, young lady, can I ask you a question? No. What grade are you in?
Tom exposed extraordinary waste in the Cleveland School Transportation Department, including buses being used for personal errands at a time when hundreds of teachers were being laid off. Worse, his research showed that the district inflated the number of children riding the buses to get more money from the state. Then Cleveland School CEO Barbara Byrd Bennett.
I don't think anybody in my office, especially me, and members of my staff, would attempt to defraud the State Department of Education.
So how did it happen?
There never really was a straight answer to that question, and like many investigations, this one began with a tip.
It starts with Mark DiMarino.
It does.
And I think it's really important to acknowledge Mark's work for the I-Team for all these years.
Mark was a true journalist, a former radio news director, and the longtime producer for the I-Team. A source told him that the school district paid over 200 spare bus drivers, people paid to show up every day and just hang out.
This is the greatest thing about, investigative reporting. How do you get the shot? Mark shows up with donuts. Everybody lets in the guy with donuts.
That started an investigation into waste that ultimately helped lead Byrd Bennett out of her job. She later went to prison, where she is today, for bribery-related convictions stemming from her time as CEO of Chicago's schools. The I-Team's investigation won numerous awards, including the DuPont, Broadcasting's Pulitzer Prize.
I'll say this about Barbara Byrd Bennett. She fooled a lot of people in this town. She never fooled me.
That is hard to do. A Cleveland kid, a product of St. Ignatius, Notre Dame, and Harvard Law School, Tom often looked for ways to help the most vulnerable. Case in point, his undercover investigation conducted in South Korea about servicemen who brought women back to America as spouses.
It's not just about prostitution. There's human trafficking going on. I don't think these women are free.
Tom wore a hidden camera inside dangerous bars and brothels in South Korea and documented U.S. military police protecting American soldiers while they paid for sex with trafficked young women.
You gotta be careful. She'll offer you a girl. If you make a deal with her, barter with her, talk her down as low as she'll go.
We broke that story and it exploded. I mean, there was a congressional hearing. The Pentagon Inspector General did an investigation. So it became a violation to engage a prostitute while you're in the military. That's the first time in history.
Tom also went undercover closer to home, donning a disguise to see how Cleveland's homeless were treated by the police.
The police were great, but there were private security forces who did harass me.
Tom Merriman always worked to make the system better. He exposed how Cleveland EMS ambulances would be tied up on ridiculous calls, while patients in need often waited.
We got 2 officers down. Step it up.
Not long after, the dispatch system started to change. Whether exposing terrorism or terrible practices or terrible waste, making a difference in his hometown is what made the difference to Tom.
I tell you, growing up in Cleveland and being able to be on the I-team, you know, it's not the Browns who are playing second base for the Indians, but it's pretty darn good. And that was pretty cool.